Better than nothing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Squat Cobbler, episode 79. I'm Kelly Toole at KELLYTHUO on Twitter and Instagram.
And I am Mike at Official Pagan on everything, but just follow me on Instagram. Why waste time?
Unfortunately, due to technical issues, which we may run into more tonight, we'll see, and a variety of things, I've been given a certain amount of time to recover from our last review of last Prisoner Exchange of the Dwarves. And
What was that album, Kelly? Just in case people want to go and search it.
Smile? Was that? I can't remember. It was something blood. I think there's blood in there, and there's guts in there, and there's other stuff. I think, but yeah. But I think if you do search on dwarves and blood and guts, you'll probably find it. I'm really trying hard to minimize the edits I have to do on this one since I kind of went through 3 or 4 software packages editing the last one. But this week, the Dwarves album, many songs, all very short. And overall, what was the overall time on it? It was like 13 minutes?
Yeah, 13 and change.
So this one's a little longer than that. This is a LP by Tonio K called La Bomba. It's got 5 songs on it, so not quite as short. But we wanted to do a couple of Prisoner Exchange of some shorter albums, and that's what we're doing here today. So I think we will get right to it, and we like to always start off by discussing the album art. So, Mike, if you're walking through back in the day when there was a record store to walk through, and you came upon this cover, would you stop for a second or not? What did you think you were in the wrong section?
I don't know. See, it's hard to say. The Tonio K album covers, because since you've introduced me to them, I have looked up a few things. It's hard to say because I like them, but I wonder if they would have caught my attention in the way that the Dwarves would have.
I would say it's a different approach, particularly this one, because I'm pretty sure you can't point to any Dwarves album that would say, boy, that's a Disney-esque picture I have there, which is exactly what you get here. You've got a couple of deer, a very almost like it came right off the screen off of Bambi, and in the background, a mushroom cloud.
So the deer obviously would have caught my attention. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this. It probably would have caught my attention. I don't want to say I'm not a Disney fan because there are things that are technically Disney properties that I really enjoy, like the Star Wars stuff, a lot of the Pixar and Marvel stuff. But the core like Disney movies, beyond like a few of the classics, I wouldn't say I'm a big Disney guy. So I would have appreciated the melding of the Disney like imagery with the mushroom cloud.
And what's very cool about this album is on the back. There's a little like logo in the center on the back that says "Nuclear No Gracias" on it, which ties into, we'll get to it, one of the songs on this album. But we actually got this album when I was in college, and we fabricated a number of buttons, the "Nuclear No Gracias" button, and they were quite popular.
Very nice there. Look at you, the enterprising entrepreneur.
There you go. Yeah, we gave them away. Just go on, be a Tonio K fan. All right. Well, we will get rolling right through here, and the first song on this album is "Fools Talk." And this is interesting because there's a kind of typically a vibe for Tonio K albums that you saw in Life in the Food Chain and America in particular. This departs from that in a lot of ways, because usually it's almost this kind of somewhere between punk and new wave, but there was kind of a real kind of grind to the band playing. And this is, I don't know, probably a little crisper, a little bit different things there, but Fool's Talk starts off, it's got some really significant kind of guitar stuff going on in kind of the big sound kind of way, and it's basically a song about people who run their mouth are basically fools, with, I think, one of the best lines on the album: "Vocabulary seems to be the opiate of the people." So that's pretty cool. But it's a really good, strong start to the album. Your thoughts?
Well, we're both first song guys, and I think this is a really cool way to start it. You brought up something that I was going to touch on. So my Tonio K experience is very limited compared to yours. So I'm glad that you touched on this first as the resident expert of us. It did seem like a little crisper, a little cleaner in the overall sound, and I kind of wanted to bring that up. So I'm not going to mention the band's name, but there's a band when I was involved in the black metal scene who was a very prominent, very respected band at that time. And they hadn't put out an album in a while, and they put out an EP. And the EP, compared to their earlier material, was I don't want to say it was clean or slickly produced, but compared to the bargain basement recording tactics of the early stuff, it was a gigantic step forward. And it was something they were very proud of because it was something they weren't able to deliver in the early days. And they actually got some backlash from fans who didn't like the slightly cleaner, slightly crisper sort of approach. So as a Tonio K fan, I assume prior to hearing this wasn't your introduction to him, correct?
Correct.
So were you off put by that the first time you heard it?
Ultimately, I wasn't because of the content of the album. These are good songs, and so I wasn't. But I was definitely caught off guard because it was not the sound that I was used to. And this is the band on this LP are none of the Earl Slick, Nick Van Marth. None of those folks are really part of this at all. It's a brand new band with, I think, some Latin or Hispanic background, and you start to get flavorings of that a little deeper into the album as well. So I wasn't put off by it at all, but I was, and because Fool's Talk, it's lyrically Tonio K, it's vocally Tonio K, but the backing is just, it's like, well, this is like a whole different band, isn't it?
Well, I'm glad to hear because I do think sometimes bands get, and this is weird because I'm going to make like black metal and death metal analogies with Tonio K, but like a band that I always throw out as an example, and I'm going to say this band's name because I don't actually know them. A band that I see a lot of people debate about. There's a death metal band that's been around forever called Cannibal Corpse. Every Cannibal Corpse record, by and large, sounds more or less the same. Like they have a wheelhouse that they're very good at, and they stay more or less within that wheelhouse. Rarely do they venture outside of their comfort zone. And it's odd because on one hand, people complain that they're just giving them the same thing year after year after year. But then when they do anything that's slightly different, people immediately call them sellouts. So I do think like artistically, a lot of times fans won't give a band or an artist the space that they need to grow or try different things. So I was very curious going into this, you as a Tonio fan, prior to hearing this, and I assumed for some reason that this wasn't your introduction to him. I don't know if you had told me that previously, but I assume this wasn't your introduction to him. So I was just curious, you as a fan hearing something different going into it, were you concerned?
Wasn't concerned because like I said they're good songs, but I was kind of thrown a little bit, and it is definitely kind of in a different space than anything he's done before. But at the same point, it doesn't come across as a kind of transparent attempt to be commercial, because this isn't like, oh, here are a bunch of radio songs. Although I will argue when we get to the end of this LP that there's a song on here that should have been possibly one of the most listened to songs of all time, but it wasn't a pure commercial play. So no, I wasn't off put at all, but it was a little bit disorienting because it just didn't have the same nature as Life in the Food Chain or America. Because, I mean, the theme still, in general, Tonio talks about things are going bad and they're getting progressively worse, which is held consistent in this one as well. But it seems a slightly chippier view, or more chipper view of the world going to hell in a handbasket.
Do you think the world going to hell in a handbasket and chippy usually go together?
Not usually, which, is the unique charm of La Bomba.
And I think that's a good way to put it. It's charm. Like there's a difference between just being blatantly sarcastic and presenting something like that with charm. And I think that's an important distinction to make with this record. And from my experience, limited as it might be with Tonio K's catalog as a whole.
Definitely agree. We come off of Fool's Talk, and there are 1.5 covers on this LP. And we come to the first one now, which is Politician, an old Cream song, a much brighter sounding version of Politician, and I think to me a better vocal delivery by Tonio, actually. He's got a lot of snarl and bark in this, and Politician's a great song. And, talks about supporting the left, but he's leaning to the right. He'll support anything on the face of the earth to wind up on the winning side. And it's got kind of some really kind of cool staccato guitar in it as well. Different than what you would get from Cream, but still very good. So this was just kind of a good, strong rocker, and a good cover. Certainly did a great song justice in a Tonio K version of it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this song as well. Like you said, 1.5 covers. This is a little bit of a shorter album. So again, I'm going to defer to you as the Tonio K fan. What are your thoughts on covers on albums? Not a cover album, but an album with cover songs on it. Do you like the inclusion of that, or do you ever feel like it's just filler, especially on something that's more like an EP?
So my opinion's kind of grounded in, and I think you go back. What you need to do is go back to what's possibly the greatest album of all time. Certainly Alice Cooper's greatest album, Billion Dollar
Love
Babies.
it to death.
Billion Dollar Babies,
Love it to death.
which had I don't think Love It to Death had it. Oh, Love It to Death had a cover too. That's right.
It did. Yeah.
And so, but on the real number one, Billion Dollar Babies, Hello Hooray, when someone takes a song and makes it their own and really takes it to a different place and kind of aligns the song into a little bit of their mojo. I think when they do something different and unique with it, I think it's great. If they basically try and replicate it with just them singing it, I'm not as big a fan. So when they play with it a little bit and kind of infuse some of what they're all about, I enjoy it. So I don't mind it. I think it's something to be done sparingly. And that's, I don't know, 5 songs, 1.5 of them are covers here. I don't know if it's sparingly so much, but it's worth it because The Politician's a great song, and the other one coming up is a pretty fun addition to the LP as well. I'm okay with it. How about you?
I fall into the same camp as you. So if you listen to the greatest Alice Cooper album of all time, Love It to
Billion
Death.
Dollar Babies.
On Love It to Death, the greatest Alice Cooper album of all time, there is a
Just
cover
behind Billion Dollar Babies.
that closes out the album. And I think more than most covers, that really brings the artist's attitude to the song. And I feel like Tonio K is one of those artists who, I mean, I feel like these are well chosen covers, but I almost feel like he could choose something that was completely out of left field the way that the Alice Cooper group did on Love It to Death, the greatest Alice Cooper album with Sun Arise. I think Tonio K is one of those artists who could pick something that was totally left field and still make it his own and still put his own stamp on it. So I don't think that's the case with this song, but he could have.
Yeah, and it fits with the vibe. This song in particular, lyrical content and overall song structure fits with Tonio and fits with his album really well. And then on the second cover, which half cover, we'll talk about here in a second, he just changed the lyrics to be Tonio-esque, and which was good. Which we will talk about after we talk about The New Dark Ages, which is a really kind of cool title. This almost feels like it could have been on one of the earlier Tonio K albums, but it does have a lot more of that kind of Latin touches to it as well, which is not seen in those earlier albums. But New Dark Ages, again, kind of familiar territory. It's about things are bad. They're going to get progressively worse. Another one again that features a lot of driving guitar. Another song with a lot of punch to it.
You touched on something that I was going to mention with this, whereas I do think with Tonio K, we do get a lot of thematically, we're in a lot of the same space here. Things are bad. They're only going to get worse. I don't mind it, though. It doesn't sound repetitive. I feel like each song's its own thing. It's enjoyable. He's not repeating the same thing that he said. It's just that you're in that headspace that he's in each of these songs. They sort of all exist in the same world, like a Marvel shared universe.
The Tonio K shared universe, indeed. So, the title track, La Bamba. And yes, indeed, but folks, it is La Bamba from a musical standpoint. And pretty faithful rendition, I think, overall to that. But it's Tonio's lyrics, and it ties back to the album cover and all that. And it's just basically about La Bamba being about the bomb and the Ruskies. And he sings it in a very interesting, there's some of it in Spanish, there's some of it in Pidgin Spanish, there's some of it in English, and it is just basically taking the song La Bamba and making it about nuclear bombs. So, very Tonio K thing to do.
At least from my experience with him. There could be like a Tonio K gangster rap album that I don't know about. I'm sure I'll get there, though. So, as Kelly said, sonically, this is an overall faithful rendition of the classic Lou Diamond Phillips song La Bamba.
But he kills it.
That, of course, was a joke for the 5 people who saw that movie. You're welcome, 5 Lou Diamond Phillips fans.
Big Bopper stole the show.
And so I did want to touch on something with this here. How do you feel, and I think we've touched on this a little bit, but this is a good moment to bring that back again. How do you feel about sort of social commentary in lyrics?
When it's not preachy and it's heartfelt and a person's just really trying to express a point of view, when they're really, I guess, not trying to lecture me or win me over or convince I'm wrong, but they're just basically saying, here's kind of where I'm coming from. When it's coming from that space, I don't mind at all. When it's more of a recruitment effort to say you need to come align with that, I'm less. I find that a little tiresome.
For me, it's really, really tough because I tend to look at music as an escape, and not that you can't talk about real issues and emotions and things like that, but I don't want to have a political debate in a song, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So like even if I agree with the person, like there are very politically charged artists out there who are very much in line with my belief system that I won't listen to just because I don't want to be preached at, even if it's something I agree with. In fact, if it's something I agree with, I'm even less likely to want to hear it because you're just telling me something I already know. And honestly, if I disagree with you fundamentally, a song isn't going to change my opinion. What I think happens here, though, is he manages to toe that line that you were talking about where it doesn't necessarily feel preachy. Just feels like he's expressing his emotions about something that's going on. And I think that that's something that most artists who kind of dabble in that don't get right.
Yeah, and Alice Cooper at one point, and it was, I don't know if it was the last political cycle or the one before, but he was, as we had a lot of rock stars coming forward expressing points of view on politicians, he's like, the last people you should listen to ever are rock stars about politicians. And Billion Dollar Babies was my greatest album. He said that right at the end too, which is awesome. But
That it's true though. I completely agree with Alice there. There's I think I may have I know I've told this story on a podcast before. I don't know if it was a Squat Cobbler podcast. I am not a Bruce Springsteen fan. There is a Bruce Springsteen song though that I am convinced in my head that Pagan would destroy if we played a cover of it. We would kill that, but I won't do it because even though on the surface there's nothing political or anything in it, I feel like there must be some political message that I just don't understand. I'm just not into that extreme version of politics enough to understand it, so I'm just missing it and I won't touch it because of that.
you gonna reveal the song, or you want to just have the people guess and think about
I'm
it?
gonna have people guess. I'm gonna have
Okay,
people guess.
fair enough. Feel free in the comments section, folks. By the way, I don't know if Mike and I have mentioned, we'd sure appreciate if you'd subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can get all this content on a regular basis. But
What an awkward place to put it now.
I know, but it seemed like a time. But if they're still here, we got a shot, because if folks have hung out this long,
That's true.
you might say, "Oh, this isn't so bad." So you can get more of this by subscribing to the YouTube channel or the blog. So Tonio's got two major. So his major focus is everything's going bad and it's getting worse, but he likes to mix it up a little bit and likes to sprinkle up some things with emotion and relationships. And it's typically about a relationship's not gone well, and he's expressing himself about it, whether it's in hatred, where he's pretty clear on that, or I'll Buy It on America, which is just a fantastic song. And so he goes back into that. And the final song that closes out the EP is Mars Needs Women. And I deeply and passionately love this song. Everything about it is just a marvel to me. It's just wonderful. It's got this really snaky bass stuff going on it, cowbell, and he's basically talking about, we argue all day, we argue all night, we stand up, sit down, fight, 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 and kind of keeps going on like that. And his suggestion to resolve the problem is that he hears Mars needs women, and maybe you should apply, and goes into a great set of lyrics on that. And so it's just, to me, a masterful song. It is super fun. This is a great one to follow. Now, I remember, as you know, and I had to actually get the bookmark from my Bible Hub. We talked a lot about the Book of Proverbs as we reviewed the Dwarves album. That came up a lot. And Tonio's actual initial musical involvement was around Christian music. And he has and he's kind of returned back to that now, the latter part of his career. But he has a very strong religious background, and that's reflected. You get bits and pieces of it in like The Night That the Clocks All Quit and the Government Failed, and those pieces there. But in the lyrics for Mars Needs Women, the printed lyrics on the album, there are two sections where there are two sections of Proverbs called out. So the lyrics in the song are, so I'll go up to the attic or the wilderness is what he says in the song. And after I'll go up to the attic, it talks about Proverbs 21:19, which that proverb is, better to live in the desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife, and then, or the wilderness, and then he lists Proverbs 21:9, which is, better to live on the corner of a roof than to share the house with a quarrelsome wife. So he took those kind of lyrics, he gave us some proverb connections to it, and just another cool layer to how awesome this song is. So I'm sure you picked that up right away, Mike.
Absolutely. In fact, The only thing I was going to say where this maybe falls a little bit short of the Dwarves album is I feel like the Dwarves were able to work their Bible references in a little bit more subtly. Here, do you want me to read you some Dwarves lyrics, Kelly?
Actually, we're good. We're good on
You
that.
sure? Okay.
Folks can go back. Folks can go back and listen to because you do a dramatic reading at the end.
That's true.
By the way, you would probably want to listen to that on the blog versus YouTube because you won't get much on YouTube because I still haven't got the edit done for YouTube. But it'll eventually be out there. I love this song, and at the end where he's talking about, tell Senator to, you should go to Mars, and maybe you should apply. He's kind of throwing out these asides at the end, like, take your cool clothes and those kinds of things. I think it's just a magical song. What were your thoughts on Mars Needs Women, Mike?
So I got really weirdly excited for a minute when I saw the title because in my mind I was like, is the Rob Zombie song Mars Needs Women a Tonio K cover? And I just didn't know it and didn't put it together until this point. It isn't. And that's not the fault of this song. It's just I'd built up in my head when I saw that, like, oh my God, that was a cover of a Tonio K song. I never knew that. And I got super pumped to hear the original version. And then it wasn't that song, which is not this song's fault in any way. That's something I did to myself going into listening to it. But now really, really, really badly want somebody to make a cover that combines elements of the two, like a mashup of the two songs.
That would be pretty amazing.
Just for me, just because in my mind for a minute, I was like, oh my God, Rob Zombie covered a Tonio K song. So once I got past my self-imposed disappointment, I really enjoyed this song.
Yeah, it is. We'll include. I must in the blog post include a link to it because I treasure this song. It's one of my all-time favorites. It is pure Tonio because this does, to a large degree, this pulls back to the first two albums. It's got all the Tonio wit and snarl and sarcasm, so it's good stuff. So that's La Bamba.
Well, I had one more question for you, Kelly.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So this is Mars Needs Women related, I guess, as well. When we did Alice, now we went through the whole Alice Cooper catalog, and then of course we created our playlist and all that good stuff. We haven't done, obviously, we've done a couple of Tonio K things here on Squat Cobbler. Now we've done 2 reviews. You had a Tonio K recommendation, and then you also had a Tonio K recommendation on Nurture and Support, correct?
I did.
So you've had some Tonio K stuff, but not like a catalog review kind of thing. So wrapping this one up, if you were to do a Tonio K playlist for somebody, though, that was an introduction to them, would anything from this particular release be on there, and what songs?
So 100% Mars Needs Women. 100%. La Bamba would be a consideration, I think, as well. And then I think the other songs are good songs, but they would be crowded out by some of the magic that has occurred on the first two. Because, how do you not have the Murs Suite and Let Us Join Together in a Tune on a Tonio K playlist, and Hatred as well, of course, Funky Western Civilization, as well as Funky Western Civilization Phase 2, which is on a later release. So I would have front and center Mars Needs Women. I think it's possibly, it's up there. It's probably not the best. I still think The Ballad of the Night That the Clocks All Quit and the Government Failed is his best song, but this is up there.
Interesting. So there is something, for just a teaser for you guys. There's something I want to talk about, Kelly, with off air, and this sort of plays into it. So maybe it'll be something that you guys get to hear in a future Squat Cobbler if Kelly agrees to it.
And the best way not to miss it would be to subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Hey, see, that's a much more natural.
That's just a natural flow. So this is why you've got experience in this space. I'm less familiar. So well played. I did, while still a little stunned, admit that while it would not have been my favorite of your recommendations so far, I enjoyed listening to the Dwarves album. How did you come out on La Bamba?
I really enjoyed it. I knew that I would, though, because I already had, some exposure to Tonio K. So this wasn't a shock to me the same way the Dwarves were to you. I mean, I feel like content-wise, it really wasn't too much of a shock when you saw the cover, heard the album title, looked at the song titles. I think you knew what you were getting in for in terms of the overall content of it. But as far as I know, you had never actually heard the Dwarves before, so you're going into it as much of a clean slate as you could be with that. I'm really not a clean slate at this point because now I've delved just a little bit into the Tonio K catalog. So I knew that I was going to enjoy it, and it lived up to what my expectations for it were.
Excellent. Well, we're continuing to plot. We'll continue to do some prisoner exchange stuff. We're looking at some other ideas. Mike's had some other ideas we won't be doing. Just want to remind him on that. He suggested a few. I've said no. he's not hearing it. Let me just say again on air, no. And
No is just the jumping off point, Kelly.
So we'll work some stuff out, but we'll have some more stuff coming. Also, continuing to work with Mel. There continues to be challenges with her internet connection and storms knocking her internet out and all kinds of things there. But you will be getting nurture and supports as well. We'll just continue to work through there and put them in where we can. And Mike and I will keep trudging along on the Squat Cobbler work. So on that note, I'd just like to say thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast.